Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Andrew Moran, Sarah Cowgill, Jim Fight, and Graham Noble. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. Three weeks ago, Ukraine seemed to be doomed. Vladimir Putin had set loose his dogs on a peaceful neighboring country. All that stood between invading Russians and a takeover of the nation was Ukraine's comedian turned president. And Volodymyr Zelensky has now become a worldwide hero, inspiring his people to resist. And resist they have. This week, Zelensky spoke before the U.S. Congress, comparing the invasion of his country to Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Graham, you covered it for LN and did an excellent job. The question is, do you think his speech moved the needle at all, especially concerning the no-fly zone and more military aid?
I don't think, and particularly concerning those aspects, Lisa, of what Zelensky wanted. No, I don't think he really is going to sway, is going to goad the US Congress into any different action, or the Biden administration for that matter. He was focused on two main things. First of all, obviously, he still wants the imposition of a no-fly zone. And of course, if NATO were to do that, it would bring the fighting to a halt very quickly. But then, of course, there are some implications to NATO actually taking that direct military involvement in this war. And so I think Zelensky knows that he's not going to get that, even though now 3 NATO countries, by the way, have actually called for a no-fly zone. But anyway, he probably knows he's not going to get that. So his alternative request was more combat aircraft, more air power to deny the Russians access to Ukrainian skies. And of course, even that now is not being it's something that the Biden administration does not, for the time being, want to do, because apparently Mr. Biden is a little afraid of upsetting Mr. Putin. But what it's come down to now is this is a war of attrition. Do the Russians run out of ability to keep funding this war before the Ukrainians run out of the manpower and resources to keep defending?
Well, that's interesting, because I was going to go next to our economic guru, Andrew Moran. And Andrew, one of the things Joe Biden does very effectively is he takes a problem and he throws a ton of our money against it. And that was the first thing that came out of his mouth following Zelensky's speech. Let's talk about the economics a little bit. Bring us up to date.
Yeah, it's interesting Graham mentioned about money, because what Russia's doing, they must have prepared very well for the bombardment of sanctions and restrictions, because what Russia's doing is that, for example, just this morning, India announced that they're establishing a central bank linkage to Russia. This means that they can engage in trade using rupees and rubles as opposed to settling their transactions in dollars. This is huge for Moscow, because now it's another revenue stream for them. They can sell their oil and gas and coal and all the other energy supplies to a country that's starving for energy. They can sell all of their agricultural commodities to India. And then when you look at Russia engaging with China, I mean, that's also another massive transaction for Russia. They have these energy deals going on. China keeps insisting that it's not going to threaten its strategic partnership with Russia over Ukraine. So a lot of the economics of it is important. Graham mentioned, will Russia run out of money? With all these different revenue streams coming forward, and it's hard to believe that. At the same time, Moscow said that it made payments on its $117 million coupon payments that were due on March 16th. Now, there's some speculation that if they missed this payment, or they missed the 30-day grace period, they would default on this, which would be catastrophic of Russia, because that's the first default in since 1998, and the first international sovereign debt default since the Bolshevik Revolution. At the same time, the world is actually hoping that Russia pays off these bonds and interest payments, because that means Russia would have to continue tapping into their huge war chest. So on one side, they're losing money. On the other side, they're gaining more money with all these countries bucking the U.S. sanctions in order to tap into Russia's huge treasure trove of commodities.
Sarah, this is Zelensky's third address to Western legislatures. We had the UK, we had Canada, and now this week we had the US. Is he really gaining any ground? I mean, he's getting a lot of smiles and applause, but I wonder, it doesn't sound like he's getting any MiGs and, the things.
I don't think America is prepared to do, well, under Joe Biden is prepared to do anything. Funny thing is, right before we started this program today, I got a message. I have a couple of friends in the Ukraine, and I got a message from one of them, and she asked, "Is your country going to help us? Is Joe Biden going to do anything?" And I didn't know how to answer that question because I'm not sure. I don't know what they're thinking, and it seems like they change their mind every other day on what exactly they are going to do. And so there's mixed messages. I think some people believe that, oh, we're throwing money at the problem, we're going to help, it's going to be great, and other people are saying close the skies, that'll end it in about a heartbeat. So I have no idea what they're doing. I really do not have a bead on this administration. It seems to change every other day.
Jim, I'm not a Biden fan, but this does seem to be a little bit of a tightrope. I mean, you go too far and you got people with their fingers on the button, and, Putin is a bad actor, and you don't know which direction he's coming from. What do you think of the Biden handling the politics of this situation so far?
Well, Joe Biden has done some things, but what we have to understand about the things that he has done is he has only done them after he has been poked and prodded and practically dragged kicking and screaming by the American people, by the popular response, by Congress, by the way, including a lot of people in his own party. He handles this like he handles every problem. He says, hey, it's not my fault, and we'll do what we can, I guess, and then does nothing until he's basically made to do something. Well, yes, he throws money at it, and we see how that has worked throughout his administration. You can't always pay away the problem.
What I find interesting about the situation in Ukraine is that it really exposed how the world really views Biden. They smell weakness coming from this administration. You have Russia invading Ukraine. You have India bucking sanctions. You have Saudi Arabia considering abandoning the US dollar to trade in wands. Everyone is just seeing how inept this administration is and how they can't do anything. And everyone's just testing the patience and perhaps the intelligence, lack thereof, in the White House.
We're talking a lot about, okay, what is America doing? What is America doing? I get it. Biden's the figurehead. Biden's the one everybody else in the world sees. And ultimately, Biden's the guy who has to make the decision on the foreign policy stuff. But there is a disconnect between the people and the president. I mean, Ukraine has a foreign legion set up and is accepting applications. There are actually American citizens who are leaving the U.S. to go fight in Ukraine. They're not even waiting on Biden to do his thing anymore.
I just have one final question. Graham, I know you've been in the war theater before, and you didn't. I didn't prepare you for this, but just off the cuff, there's a lot of conversation going on. This is an offensive weapon. This is a defensive weapon. I mean, we're going to give this because it's a defensive weapon, but we're not going to give that because it's an offensive weapon. Do you think that Putin kind of parses those things, or he just figures you're giving them something and that's already too much?
Well, I think, yes, to a certain extent, it's a very good question, Lisa, actually, because of course, offensive weapons are things like tanks and ground attack aircraft and stuff like that. Defensive weapons are things like what they call man pads, which are basically man portable, kind of anti-armor and anti-aircraft munitions, devices. And those, of course, are defensive because they're designed to destroy advancing armor and to shoot attacking aircraft out of the skies. So those are defensive weapons. And of course, Putin does look alike because because he says, well, when the West is providing just defensive weapons, then that means that they, i.e. NATO and the US, are not essentially, they're not trying to assist Ukraine in attacking the Russian military forces. They're simply assisting Ukraine in defending themselves against attack. So it's that kind of wartime dynamic. It's if NATO and the US, well, of course, the US is part of NATO, but if NATO started to provide offensive weapons, then that actually does change the dynamic. And Putin would see that as, okay, well, now the West involvement is less passive now. It is more aggressive.
Right. Well, President Zelensky has undoubtedly already earned one thing for himself, and that is Person of the Year honors. The question is whether, his bravery can ultimately prevent Vladimir Putin from wiping Ukraine off the map or plumb out of time. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Join us on the Member Zone, just $17.76 for the year. Thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank DiOrio, and our executive producer, Sarah Calgill. I'm Lisa K. Donner, editor-in-chief. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.